Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. It is third in a series of webinars that have been offered by Ibn Sina Foundation in partnership with the H-Bond Foundation, TIGME, and InnovaCore. For me, it is the second seminar that I'm presenting to you. The first one was on the Doctors Act. This one was actually by large public demand that they wanted to know what is the alternative pathways, other pathways that are available to physicians to actually practice in the United States without a residency. So we will talk about this today as to what are the other available, and we will see how we can move this forward. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Sohail Rao. I'm a graduate of Dow Medical College in Karachi, which is my alma mater. I did my master's from Boston University, and I did my doctorate from Oxford University, and some part of my training was at the Harvard University. I'm currently the president and DIO of the Texas Institute for Graduate Medical Education, which is actually in Houston and Dallas, and I'm also the president of the InnovaCore Center for Research and Biotechnology in San Antonio, and also of the H-Bond Foundation, which is also in San Antonio. I have been engaged and involved with GME since 2011. So I have a little over 2 decades of experience in this particular area. And I've set up numerous graduate programs, GME program across the country and also internationally. So it is from that particular vantage point that I am actually sharing with you my experience, but more importantly, interpreting what the current law is or laws are regarding the initiation of residency programs in the United States, the alternative pathways. I just want to make sure that you understand that this is an informal, informational webinar. It is not in any way legal, so I do not want you to take it verbatim. Everything that I say or share with you, or we say and share with you, please go and take legal advice. Look at the state statutes, because every state has its own rules. We cannot, in a webinar of 1 hour, go through all the rules that are available for all the states. So they continue to change. So make sure that you actually are on top of whichever state you are actually seeking to practice in, and that you are fully aware of what those state regulations are. And more importantly, the regulations of the medical board of that particular state. So just for briefly, why the United States is actually going down this particular pathway. And that is because there is a severe projected shortage of physicians in the United States. More so in a sizable number of those are actually going to be in rural and underserved areas. So keep in mind that as you are progressing towards an alternative pathways, that one of the important element is that you will at some point be serving in a rural and underserved area. And if that is not within your framework of future career growth, then you should not actually look for alternative pathway. This is not a pathway for you. So there is a persistent workforce shortage across the United States, and the traditional licensure pathways, which is basically you come in, you do your USMLE, you go through a ACGME accredited residency programs, and then if you want to do fellowship, you go ahead and do the fellowship, which is also ACGME accredited. Those are actually very limited in number and capacity, and that is the primary reason for creating those bottlenecks. The second important part of those traditional licensure pathways are that most of them are concentrated in urban areas, not in rural or underserved areas. And therefore, it is very difficult to take a graduate of that particular program to actually go and serve a rural or underserved area. So I think that there are certain limitations there, which has prompted the US government and individual states to come up with alternative pathway. Now, in my last talk, I talked to you about the alternative pathways, and we talked about the bridging pathways and the pathways that do not require residency prerequisites. And then we talked about we didn't talk about the re-entry pathway, but this was actually, many of you have actually written to me directly that they want to know a little bit more about the re-entry pathway. So we will talk very briefly about this at the end. Now, in the bridging pathway is what is called the assistant or associate physician program. This is for US citizen or residents only. So let us be very clear. If you're not a US citizen or resident, the bridging licensure pathway is not for you. Okay, so you have to have a permanent residence of United States, which means a green card, or you have to be a US citizen. The second one, which we discussed already in two previous webinars, was the Doctors Act, which is for the provisional licensing pathway for international medical graduates. And then this is going to be the re-entry pathway are for those physicians who have previously practiced in the United States, which means that they are actually US residents or citizens. They had previously a US license to practice in United States. And for one reason or the other, their license has lapsed or there has been a gap. And we will talk about this, and they want to go back into clinical practice. What we will not talk today is this one, because we have already talked about it previously. So we're going to go straight into the bridging licensure and then transition into the re-entry pathway. Now, just so that you understand that in this particular pathway, this is, again, I want to very clearly state that this is not a pathway for actually going into a practice, because you cannot go into practice just by through this pathway. There's a limited education and training, and after that, either you go into a residency program or you are out. So what are the program highlights? It has already been enacted in 12 states. Remember, we talked about the Doctors Act or similar pathways in provisional licensure, that they were already in 18 states and 19 additional states were looking at it. Well, this particular pathway has been already enacted in 12 states. And by the way, it has been there for some time. So it is not as if it happened today or yesterday, but it is becoming more and more more people are actually looking into these pathways, given the fact that there is a limited number of residency slots available. You have to be a US citizen or permanent resident, no if, and, or but about it. You must be a graduate of a recognized and accredited medical school, which could be here in the United States or any international, but it has to be recognized by a recognized school, an accredited medical school. And you must have a ECFMG certificate, because when you get an ECFMG certificate, the ECFMG, the organization, is basically ensuring that you have actually graduated from a recognized or accredited medical school internationally. You must have passed USMLE Step 1 or Step 2 CK. Now, this is another important requirement, that you must have passed USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 CK, or complex level 1 and 2 CE. This is for Canadian graduates. And last but not the least is that you must not be enrolled or accepted in any residency program in the US when you apply for this particular pathway. Now, one would say, I already have Step 1 and Step 2 CK. I have ECFMG certificate. Why should I actually go into this particular program? I am a US citizen or permanent resident. Why should I actually even consider this program? And the answer to that is very simple. You have applied to the residency program. You have not been able to secure a position. And instead of waiting for 1 or 2 years or 3 years to get into a residency program, this is actually a good way of continue to gain experience, be engaged in clinical care of patients, which is going to also help you ultimately to get into a residency program, because that's going to fortify your application for a residency program of your choice. So I just want to do a little bit of comparative analysis from state by state, and I will also then in the end, after this done, I'm going to pick up a few states which have certain unique requirements. But I will not be able to actually go through all the 12 states because it's a very complex algorithm, and we do not have much time to do this. Now, let me just make sure that you understand what the headings here are. I think everything else is understandable. MUA stands for medically underserved areas. Okay, these are rural areas which are medically underserved, and there is HRSA has a very defined, CMS and HRSA have a very defined terminology and explanation of what MUA is. And so I would strongly recommend that you go on HRSA website and look for what the MUA really stands for, particularly if you do not know what underserved areas are. Now, there, Missouri, again, this is an important point. When you are looking at these programs in different states call this particular program differently. Okay, so for example, Missouri calls it assistant physician programs. IMGs are eligible. In some states they are not, and I'll show you where IMGs are not eligible. So you have to be a graduate of a US school. And again, you have to be US citizen or permanent resident. So I'm not going to repeat that again. And then the maximum time that you can actually spend in this particular physician assistant pathway or assistant physician is 3 years. You have to spend that time in a medically underserved area, and you can only do primary care. And by the way, primary care is defined by HRSA as internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, and psychiatry. That's defined as a primary care only. In Utah, which is where it is called associate physician, again, the requirement for IMGs is, yes, you can go there, but you have to have an ECFMG certificate. The limitation, the maximum time you can spend in this program is 6 years. And there is a little bit leniency. And when I say the word no, I do not intend to give you the impression that you do not have to serve in a medically underserved area. There is a certain period of time, but a very short period of time, but you can actually go into a much larger urban areas. And again, it is limited to primary care. In Arizona, it is called the transitional training permit. Okay. And the maximum period is 2 to 3 years. You do not have to, in Arizona, you do not have to serve in a medically underserved area, and is limited to primary care only. I want to caution you. Some of the physicians, and I have some of the colleagues who have actually gone into these programs in different states, have confirmed this, that many of the physicians are actually using US scribes. That is not the intent of this particular program. The intent of this particular program, and we will talk about in some of the state, is actually to give you clinical exposure, for you to actually work with the mentor or the supervisor and treat patients. And you will see that in some states, it is actually very lenient as to what level of independence they provide to you in terms of dealing with the patients as a provider, as a physician. So please do not accept the position just as a scribe or as a medical assistant. That is not going to help you in the long run into getting into a residency program. Kansas, it's called a special permit. IMGs are not eligible in Kansas. So if you are an international medical graduate, though you have a US citizenship and American residence, you are not allowed. You have to be a graduate of US or Canadian medical school or DO school. The time limit, the word is limited, because it is actually much, for all intent and purposes, determined by the Kansas Medical Board. Okay, you are required to serve medically underserved area. And again, and you will see this trend is actually quite replicative, that most of these states want you to focus on primary care. In Florida, it is called the graduate assistant physician. Okay, in Florida, the IMGs, yes, you can. Now, I did not put the ECFMG after yes, because they are a little bit more lenient as long as you provide enough documentation that your school has been accredited from by international agency, they will accept that particular application. Again, the time limit maximum is 3 years. You are not required to serve in a medically underserved area. And again, you have to be in a primary care only. In Louisiana, this program is actually called Bridge Year Graduate Physician. IMGs are eligible, very much like Florida. You have to give them documentation. The time limit is limited, again, dependent on Louisiana Medical Board. They will determine as to what would be, but I can assure you that this is not going to be more than 2 to 3 years. So don't think that you will be in this particular program for a long period of time. Frankly, it's actually going to be counterproductive if you are in a program of this nature for a long period of time, because it does not lead to licensure. You do not have to serve medically underserved area, and it's again primary care. Alabama, this particular program is actually called Bridge Year Graduate Physician. International medical graduates, as of today, they are not eligible to apply in Alabama. Okay. The time again is dependent on the Alabama Medical Board. As far as the MUA is concerned, you do not have to actually serve in a underserved community. And again, it's primary care. Idaho, this particular program is called a Bridge Year Physician. This is extremely important because every state has a different terminology for this particular program. So if you go Google it, make sure that you know what the terminology of that is that you're Googling. The maximum time limit is 1 year. And again, you do not have to serve in a medically underserved area, and you have to do primary care. And this is the last one. In Maryland, it is called the Supervised Medical Graduate. IMGs are allowed. And again, you have to give them paperwork and evidence that your school from which you have graduated is a internationally recognized school. Time limit is limited. Wherever there is a word limited, sorry, wherever there is a word limited, it means that it is largely dependent on the medical board of that particular state. And again, as it states over here, you're not required to serve in a medically underserved area. And the focus is largely on primary care. Tennessee, this particular program is called Graduate Physician. IMGs are eligible, and the same as with Maryland, limited time, no medically underserved area, and primary care only. And last, I believe, is Arkansas. There it is called the Graduate Registered Physician. In Arkansas, IMGs are not eligible. And they have a limited time period, again, dependent on the board, Arkansas Medical Board, and you are not required to serve in a medically underserved area, and primary care only. And in Texas, where I am, sorry, I'm not feeling well today, but in Texas, where I am, it's called physician graduate, and I'll go into Texas a little bit more later. You do require, IMGs are allowed. You do require ECFMG certification. Time limit is limited. And as far as the MUA and primary care is concerned, I've put 2 question marks because I'm going to deal with this later. So the question is that we have gone through 12 different states. I've given you the terminology. I've given you whether you're eligible or not eligible as an international medical graduates. What is the time limit? Whether you will or will not serve in a medical underserved community. And again, for every program that you can think of, and I will talk to you in a minute about Texas, primary care is the only area that you can go in. So if you want to, and by the way, this is not a bad thing. Even if you want to be a neurosurgeon or want to go into orthopedics and you are doing internal medicine during this period, it's actually going to help you get into that residency program. So don't think that the fact that you're not practicing in this particular period in your area of interest does not suggest that you will not be able to get into your professional goal, achieve your professional goal by getting into a subspecialty. So this particular program has been designed in such a way to help you get into residency program, to gain clinical experience, to gain better references, to make sure that people understand that your interest in medicine is beyond just going into subspecialty or primary care. So I'm going to go through some of the states' requirements, which are unique. As I said, I already talked about those 4 or 5, 6 requirements initially. So I'm not going to go through those requirements again, but just some states where it is very unique. So this is the state of Missouri. In all of these, and I put it over here only because this is something which will repeat itself in every state, that you require what is called the CPA, the Collaborative Practice Agreement with a licensed physician. Now here you do not have to go to an institution. You can just go to any licensed physician and establish a collaborative practice agreement, as long as they are prepared to provide you with the supervision that is needed. In this particular state, they only require 30 days of direct supervision. So means that you basically are under the shadow of this particular physician, licensed physician. Everything that you are doing, they have to provide direct supervision. They have to be shoulder to shoulder with you when you are examining a patient, when you are prescribing something to the patient. Everything has to be on direct. And after that, you can practice independently within the radius of 50 to 75 miles of the supervising physician. Why? That if God forbid something goes wrong, this particular physician can immediately assist you, either physically or otherwise, in resolving that issue that you had. And as I said, the supervising physician must be available for immediate consultation. So this is a great program. You only have to do 30 days of direct supervision, and then you practice independently. Just imagine that in your letter of reference that is coming from this licensed physician says that you have practiced independently for a period of 1 year, 2 years, or whatever the case may be. What impactful it's going to be in your residency application. In the state of Utah, again, you need a CPA from a licensed physician. This particular state is among the most permissive supervision structure. So initially direct, then indirect, again the same. And here, one of the most important thing in Utah is that there is no 50 to 75 mile geographic limitation. So there's no geofencing that has been established around you. You can actually be 100 miles away, but in the same state. You can't go and practice in another state, but in the same state, there are no geographical limitations. And here also, and in the end, I will actually tell you if you are an international medical graduate, which particular state you should actually be looking at, which are IMG friendly. Okay. So in this, this is also one of those permissive states, which actually has up to 6 years that you can be in this particular program. I hope nobody's in this program for 6 years, but it gives you a little bit more leniency of actually staying in this particular program. In the state of Arizona, this state is a little bit more restrictive in the sense that you must apply within 2 years of graduation. Okay, so if you have graduated and you in 2021, and you are applying in 26, it's not going to work. Okay, you have to be must apply within 2 years of graduation. It's the most restrictive supervision requirements. Okay, here you do not have, you only can do direct supervision. And then they also say that you must also apply for residency at least 3 times per year. Now, for the life of me, I cannot understand how you can apply for residency 3 times per year, because you only can apply once a year during the opening period for the National Residency Matching Program. I actually wrote to the medical board in Arizona in preparation for this and asking them for some clarification as to how can a person apply for 3 times per year? And I have not received a response. If I do, I'm going to actually post it. Again, license duration is 1 year initially and renewable up to 2 to 3 years. So this is a very restrictive state. And one of the individuals who actually contacted me was actually from Arizona. He's an international medical graduate from one of the medical schools in Pakistan. He's a US resident. He went to international medical school in Pakistan, came to US, is a resident of Arizona. And he actually told me that the most he's doing is being a scribe for the physician. And I told him to immediately exit from that particular physician and find another physician who understands the nature of this particular program, and that this is to facilitate you to get into a residency program. In the state of Arkansas, this is again one of those schools where you have to be a graduate of an Arkansas MD or DO school, or you must be an Arkansas resident. Okay, so you can't be coming from Texas and applying. You are an international medical graduate coming from Texas, applying in Arkansas. That's not going to work. It only allows direct supervision. And there is the medical board of Arkansas has to approve what is called the protocol of supervision. So the physician who actually supervises you has to complete a protocol of how he is going to supervise you. Okay, and that protocol of supervision is actually then submitted to the medical board in Arkansas, and they then approve your. So it is a very restrictive program, in a sense that it restricts it only to Arkansas. In Florida, the requirement is that in the first year following your graduation from medical school, you must have applied to a residency program. So let us say that you graduate in 2005. You must have applied in the fall of 2005 into a residency program, and you did not get matched into the residency program starting July 1st, 2026. This is a requirement in Florida. Okay, so it's a sizably restrictive program. Only direct supervision is allowed. And again, the protocol of supervision has to be approved by the medical board. By the way, let me make sure that I make it very clear. The protocol of supervision is actually required even when you have direct and indirect supervision. Okay. But over here, the protocol of supervision is much more restrictive because only direct supervision is allowed in this particular program. Now let's come to the state where I am, the state of Texas. In this particular program, you must be a resident of Texas. There you go. So you cannot apply if you're not a resident of Texas. Okay. So you must be a resident of Texas. You must have graduated within 2 years preceding the date of initial application. Okay. So if you're applying in 2026, you have to be graduated no earlier than 2024. Must at all time while practicing display a personal identification document identifying the license holder as a physician graduate. So when you will have your ID, it will actually say this is something which has been mandated by the legislator and endorsed by the Texas Medical Board, that informing the patient that you are a physician graduate, that you're not the primary physician, that you're not a licensed physician, that you're a physician graduate is actually ethical. Then there are a number of other limitations that are put on individuals. The duration, whether it is 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years. Again, in most cases, you will not be allowed to go and practice in areas other than primary care. But the Texas Medical Board has been provided with sizable discretion by the legislator so that they can actually determine your limitations, your durations as on a case-by-case basis. Okay. But it's again very restrictive. You have to be a resident of Texas. Now, as I said, I'm going to provide some guidance to IMGs. I'm sure there are individuals over here who are actually graduates of US medical schools. So just pardon me for a while. I'm talking here to international medical graduates. So here are the states which are actually IMG friendly. Okay, if you have, and remember, in Texas, you require a state residence. But if you are a resident of Texas in states and you want to have gone to international medical school, here are the 6 or 7 IMG friendly states. In no order of priority, by the way. I have not said Missouri is the first one, is the best, and Texas is the worst. So it's in no order of priority, but these are IMG friendly states. There is, as far as the license duration is concerned, you apply to states such as Utah with longer duration. Okay, most offer 2 to 3 years. My advice to you is, if you are in a program for 6 years, you have missed the boat. Okay, something has gone wrong, and this is going to be a career-ending decision by you if you continue for 6 years in a program. Geographical restriction. Missouri and Kansas and many other states require a service in medically underserved area. If this is not something you want to do, please do not apply to those states which require MUA, because this is going to be counterproductive to your professional growth. And all states limit to primary care service. So that's the scope of service. Many people have actually written back to me and said, well, I don't want to go into primary care. I want to do X, Y, and Z, which is not in the 5 primary care areas. And I said, fine. But what you are actually, this particular program is allowing you to do is that instead of just staying at home, you are actually practicing what you will ultimately practice in your area of specialty, AI, interaction with patients, helping patients, taking care of patients, history and physical. You will have the knowledge of recent rules and regulations, changes by CMS and by FDA and others. So all those things are actually helpful. So I have told many students who have applied, who have contacted me, that this is not the area of specialty they want to go in. I said, go in. It's not the area of specialty that's important at this time. It's the experience that is going to help you catapult you into a residency position. How and where to apply? So some of you have asked me, well, okay, this is good and fine and good. How do we apply? And where do we apply? So first of all, make sure that you have all your documentation ready, because in most of the applications, they will require letters of references. Okay, so make sure that all your documents are ready. Find a supervising physician. Let us say you want to apply, you are a Texas resident and you want to apply in Texas. Find a supervising physician. Here, the requirement that the supervising physician has to be in an ACGME approved program or in an ACGME affiliated institution does not matter. It could be any physician, private physician. You can actually go to them and find a supervising physician. You execute a CPA with the supervising physician, because that's going to be part of your application. And then you submit your application to the relevant medical boards. Now, many of you come to, who are resident of Texas or resident of Arkansas or other places, you come to United States from after getting your international medical, your MD from an international medical school. You come and you actually get attached to a physician and you shadow with them. Don't do that. Apply to this particular program. It is a much more formal program. And many residency programs understand the restrictive nature of these programs and that it requires 8 A's A and B is B. And so instead of just saying I shadowed with physician A, B, and C, you are now actually a part of a program that is approved by the Texas Medical Board or the medical board of any other state. So this is just to give you an example. This is the Texas Medical Board. If you were to apply for a licensure application here, so remember, you have to apply through this particular pathway. Although you will get what is called a temporary license, this is actually a training license that you will get, just like if a resident gets, and you apply and you go to this particular login and submit your application. So I'm only going to show you for Texas. You can go to any other medical board out there and they will give you this information. Okay, so that was a lot of information. It took almost 35 minutes to get through it. Again, I strongly urge you that if you are a international medical graduates and you are a US citizen or US resident, that you take advantage of these programs if you're unable to get into a residency programs. This will actually help you get into your residency program. Do not think that because you are actually practicing in primary care areas, you will not be ultimately able to apply for your area of residency training, such as orthopedics or surgery or others. I can tell you that this is actually going to be extremely helpful, even though you are not intending to go into primary care residency program. Do not accept any position as a scribe or a medical assistant, because that is not going to help you. You have an opportunity in front of you where you can actually go and be part of a structured program that is recognized by all the organizations, including most graduate medical education programs across the United States. So why not go into a structured program, increase your ability to get into a residency program of your choice within the time limit that has been imposed by these programs. With that said, I'm actually now going to move on to the next one, which is the physician reentry pathway. So there are three definitions that are actually a little bit confusing. And I want to make sure that we are all clear about what we are talking about over here. One of them is the reentry pathway. This is the one that we will be discussing today. Now, in this particular pathway, you must have been previously trained or certified, okay? Which means that you must have had at some point in your previous professional career a valid license to practice in the United States. Now, with that goes a number of things that you must be a green card holder or resident and must have gone through a residency program that is ACGME accredited. So all those things actually go into it. So, but you must have a previous license to practice in the United States. Following that, for reasons that we will discuss, you have like some level of period of clinical inactivity. But this period of clinical activity was not because you were disciplined or because there was any other impairment. Okay, so this clinical inactivity, and we will talk about some of those clinical activities that you could have had that would qualify you to actually go into the reentry program. Now, there is a separate program which is called retraining. And this is, again, the Texas, then I keep on using the Texas, but the Florida Medical Board or the Texas or Arizona Medical Board, for one reason or the other, may require you to get retrained in a specialty. And the last but not the least is remediation. This is addressing deficiencies that are identified through some disciplinary process by the relevant medical board. So these are three very different pathways. we are going to focus today with you on the reentry pathway so that we have a better understanding of how you can get into, come back into practice. So there are many reasons of why there might be a gap. You might be raising a family. You might be a caregiver for someone in your family who is ill. You personally could be ill. Maybe you took some time off and became a researcher or went into administration. You took early retirement but want to come back. Burnout is a big one because during the COVID-19 period, a lot of physicians just gave up and said, we are not going to practice anymore. There was an absolute burnout. But now many of them are actually coming back, realizing that we need to actually practice. Many physicians actually go for many years to practice internationally. And when they come back to the United States, they have not practiced for a long period of time. And then when they come back, they would have to go through this reentry process. And obviously, military service transition. Okay, so there are different requirements for how long you have been away. Okay. So the general reentry requirements are actually in front of you on the slide. So it goes from less than 2 years to more than 10 years. The bottom line is the more you are, the larger, the wider the gap between when you stopped practicing to when you decided you want to come back again, the more requirements there are. That's the bottom line. Okay. And we'll go through some of these requirements just to make sure that everyone understands what these requirements are and how can they fulfill these requirements. Okay. So as far as the continuing medical education is concerned, it's normally about 100 to 200, 50 to 100 hours of CME that you have to do. And here are all the various, and this is just to show that, or to convince the medical board that you understand all the new knowledge that has come because of your the gap in your service, that you understand the changes in guidelines, that you are aware of the updates that are in your practice. So you basically go through a series of questions, and here are some of the websites where you can actually go and take these CME for free. Okay. And so these CME is a requirement practically for every pathway. So although I have not listed in the previous slide as to if you are more than 10 years, whether you need CME or not, you do need CME. So CME is constant for whether you are less than 2 years or more than 10 years. Competency evaluation is important because if you recall, some of those require formal assessment of your clinical knowledge and skills. And this would be a standardized examination. It's 1 day, about roughly 330 questions. And you can actually go to SPECS or COMVEC for DO graduates, SPEC for MD graduates. And here are the website, the links to them. And you can actually take this standardized exam. Again, it's assessing your clinical knowledge and skills. Okay, this is what the competency evaluation is all about. Now, then there is a formal reentry program. Okay. And there are, at the moment, 6 formal reentry programs, because if you recall, the longer you are away from practice, the more restrictive requirements become. And the formal reentry program actually comes into place when you actually are more than 5 years, 4 or 5 years out of your, or the Texas Medical Board may decide that you actually need to go through a formal reentry program. Okay, or any board for that matter could decide. And by the way, this reentry program is available across the country. So it is not just in one particular state, but in every state that you can think of, this formal reentry program exists. So it is not state specific. And here are the 6 programs that you can actually, you can pick any one of them and go through this formal reentry. We have this Center for Personalized Education for Physicians. We have the Drexel University Physician Refresher and Reentry Program. We have a program called K-STAR, which is offered by UTMB, University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, in partnership with Texas A&M. We have the University of California San Diego program called PACE. We have the Physician Reentry, Retraining and Reentry program, and we have the Lifeguard program. Here are the, I'm not going to go through this particular slide because it's very involved, but these are some of the programs that actually, those 6 programs which are, they tell you the location, whether the program format is hybrid, which means that you can actually do part of it remotely and part of it you have to do on site, whether the program is entirely in person. For example, the Drexel program is entirely in person. And it also tells you a little bit about which program is best for you depending on how long you have been away. So for example, the CPEC program, which is the extended reentry track, is actually for physicians who are out more than 10 years. Okay, so, and the requirements are different. The duration of these programs is different. But I have given you in this particular slide the contact information for each and every program. And this is the other programs there, the K-START that we were talking about. It is UTMB and Texas A&M combined have put together. It's an in-person program. It's literally a mini residency. And it's a 3-month full-time. And if you're physicians who are out 5 years and more and need intensive hands-on retraining, this is the program for you. Okay, I'm not going to go through each and every one of them because we are going to post these slides on our website and provide it to you so that you can actually go to these sites. I'm going to stop here. I think we have talked about, and I'm just going to give you a synopsis that we have talked about this program, which is called the Bridge to Residency. I strongly urge, if you're an international medical graduate or graduate of a US medical school or a Canadian medical school, D or MD, that you actually look into this particular program as a stepping stone to get into residency if for some reason you have not been successful. This program is extremely valuable. It gives you immediate exposure, keeps your skills up to date, and gives you a very solid reference when you apply for a residency program. I strongly urge you not to accept a position as a medical assistant or in any similar position or a scribe, because that is not going to help you in your meeting your professional goal. So be very careful in how you select. Be selective as to which state you want to go in. If serving medically underserved area is not in your professional map, do not accept a program which requires you to go into MUAs. And make sure that this particular program does not require you to go to an institution which has ACGME accredited residency or fellowship programs or affiliated with ACGME residency or fellowship programs. So you could essentially go to any institution where there is a supervising physician who's licensed, who can actually give you a position with them to supervise. I'm going to stop here. Thank you again for your time. I hope this was helpful. And I'm going to stop and take some questions to see if there are any. Do we have any questions?
So, sir, there's a one question that which states allow OBGYN?
All states would, any state that has primary care would allow OBGYN. Because primary care is defined by HRSA as internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, and psychiatry.
Okay. And then, sir, there's a question that whether Maryland and Tennessee require ECFMG certification?
No, they do not require. It would be nice if you have ECFMG certification. They do not require ECFMG certification, but they do require documentation that your international medical school is a recognized medical school.
And so someone has asked for our contact number. So I'd request that, you can send your query on our email address, which is on the flyer. And then I'll direct your query to Dr. Rao, and then he can respond. Thank you so much. And sir, there's just one more question about, okay, so for recording again, my suggestion would be to go to Ibn Sina website. You'll find the recording of today's webinar. So sir, there's a query that I'm an old graduate US citizen, ECFMG certified with the physician assistant programs are the way to go.
Again, if you are planning to actually go into because remember, this is a bridge to residency. Certain residency programs, and I'm going to be candid with you, certain residency programs, frankly, do not accept physicians who have been away for more than 2 or 3 years. In fact, it used to be 2 or 3 years. Now, actually, residency programs don't accept applicants who are even 5 years. So I think we need to understand, if you have been away from your clinical practice for a long period of time and you want to get back, because these are bridge. So you would have to show intent to get into a residency program. It's not that you can just apply and the medical board is going to give you a training license. So you have to show an intent, and the medical board is going to review your application, and they may determine your candidacy and how competitive it is for the residency program. So if you have been away for a long period of time, I would strongly urge you not to consider this program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao. Really appreciate your presentation. It was very comprehensive. I think so most of the queries have been covered. Most of the people are asking for our recording. So again, I just would like to reiterate that you can just go to Ibn Sina Foundation website and can access the recording.
Well,
and
thank you.
we have been sending emails to those who are the participants. So maybe I can again send email that, where they can access the recording of today's webinar.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you, everyone, for arranging this, and for those who actually took the time to attend this webinar. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day, everyone.